I'm going to move.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Lane Learning Center in beautiful Lexington, Massachusetts, at our monthly Camp Constitution's monthly luncheon. And we have a great program. But before we introduce our guest speaker, I want to point out a couple of guests. One of them is a former colleague, John McManus, Mr. McManus. He has been in this house probably 1,000 times when it was used by Mr. Andy Lane as a local chapter. And Mr. McManus is the author of about, I don't know, 8 or 9 books. And I brought 2 of them with me. And this would be sort of a fundraiser, Changing Commands, which deals with the United Nations and the United States military. This came out, what, 95? 94?
Yeah.
We actually had this presentation on C-SPAN in Hyde Park, Boston. And I aged. I won't tell you what happened, but somebody came to the event and suggested that the president, that somebody do something to the president. And, oh my goodness, C-SPAN, Secret Service called, but it was just a guy that was a little upset about things, but I could feel my hair turning gray when that happened. So this book I'll never forget. And this book is called The Insiders, and every 4 years it would be updated. I think this one has this up to Jimmy Carter. No, Bill Clinton. And I have, so for $10 you get 2 of them, and I'm sure he'll be happy to sign the books. Now, before we introduce our, I also, of course, want to mention our great family camp that's coming up in July at the Singing Hills Christian Camp. I got pamphlets, so if you want to take some with you and help promote it. This is a family camp, all ages. We have older people that come unaccompanied. We have whole families. We even have mother-in-laws that come. In some cases, we have people who love their mother-in-laws. I love mine, who's just passed away.
Yeah.
And we're lining up a list of instructors. Of course, Reverend Kraft will be there. And Mrs. Kraft, Edith, and she can show her hand there. She is in charge of the program for the younger people. And Mrs. Catherine White is our expert on the Constitution and also marksmanship. Because this camp we're allowed to shoot there. Not only do we shoot 22s and ARs, but we shot cannons. Although nothing came out of this black powder. It was kind of fun. And so it will be July 18th to the 23rd, and please avail yourself. And if you'd like to help out, you know, making donations to the camp to help enable people to attend, you can make a donation, or even on our website, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can make a donation to our PayPal page. And
we're also looking for volunteers to help with juniors.
oh yes, we need volunteers. We also have a ladies' retreat, which we started this year. It was very successful. And next year it's going to be the first weekend in October. Maybe a spring retreat, we'll keep you posted. And Saturday, the camp ladies are meeting here to do a craft. You see that, that little bowl there on the table? That's what they're going to be making. Also, Mr. Thurman Smith, who I've known, I don't know, since the mid-90s maybe. He comes I told Rev, once every 5 years he comes to one of our events. So. And he wrote a great book called Supreme Damage, Rescuing Representative Government from Judicial Overreach. And he's going to give me just a few minutes to talk about the book.
Yeah, well, supposedly we're in a republic, right? That is, the laws we make are made by legislators, either federal or, in this case, we're in a federal republic, so a lot of the laws are made by states, including the laws of everyday life and so forth. So always been bothered by courts getting in the way and actually, you know, making whole new laws, especially wholesale changes in public policy regarding family, marriage, and you know, again, everyday life and morals. So I decided to document or to describe some particularly erroneous cases, and some of them have to do with economic issues, economic freedom, immigration, so forth. But three of the cases in here have to do with what MassResistance is concerned with, and one is Jefferson versus Board of Education, 1947. That's where this wall of separation myth, misconstruing got it started, and about public expressions of religious sentiment. So, and then going on there, I have a very long chapter on from Lawrence versus Texas versus to Obergefell, and that's I cover the whole sequence, starting with the Goodrich decision here in Massachusetts, going down to the Texas decision, and then on back and forth on to Obergefell. So if you want a full course on the involvement of same-sex marriage issue and how the courts kind of mess things up all the way along, I got the whole story in here. And then of course there's Roe versus Wade, that's in there, and explain how white wasn't really justificable in the first place, but among other issues. So, there are chapters that deal with other issues, asset forfeiture, economic freedom, and so forth. So a whole bunch of about 17 cases in here that are described. The book has links in the text, so you can go to a website. There's for that website. You just a website with the links. So if you're reading a hard copy, you can look at your screen and click on that index link and go to a fuller story. Right. There's also suggestions for further action and other reading, and there's an ebook version, which is like $3.99 on Amazon. That has the links that are live. So if you're reading the ebook, just click on the link, and it'll take you to always easily come back. The print book is $8.95 at Amazon. What I have brought with me today. Oh yes, there are a lot of constitutional amendments in the thing. So it's not just gripes. There's suggested action, including like writing. Well, today I deposited 9 letters in the mailbox going to each Supreme Court justice saying you really got to take this Texas thing. Okay, so they're writing the court. The judges do read their mail. Okay, they open the letters carefully, under protection in case there's a bomb in there or something. But I sent one of these to Clarence Thomas, and he sent me thank you.
Very good.
Okay. And then there are the amendments in there, suggestions for action, and further reading and so forth. And so there's quite a bit in here. Now, I bought some copies of the first edition, which since I've added another chapter and I put an index in and I had it professionally edited, so I have a certain number of copies. So these will be free. But if you want the fuller indexed and editorially improved version, that's $8.95 on Amazon or $3.95 or $3.99 as an ebook on Amazon. Wherever. So that's all.
Wonderful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's someone I also want to mention, Mr. Mark Fisher. I think this is his first time in the Lane House. Mr. Mark Fisher ran against Charlie Parker, as we call him here, and Charlie Baker. For some people who don't know why we call him Charlie Parker, Biden made reference to him as Charlie Parker instead of Charlie Baker, so that's why he's known as Parker. And I was a Ward 20 in West Roxbury delegate to the convention. I was the only one out of my 20 or so that voted for Mark Fisher, and I was very honored and happy to do so. He did make the primary and lost it, but still had a good showing. At least we had somebody we could vote for.
Amen.
And not
Amen.
regret, or sometimes you have to hold your nose and pull the lever. We did when you vote for Mark Fisher, you didn't have to do that. So we're very glad he was able to come here. We'll probably have to speak here sometime down the road. So now for our guest speaker. I first met Brian back in the early 90s at an event that was hosted in downtown Boston, and we've been close ever since. I don't work directly with him, but I get his emails and I implement things. And if you just Google his name or do a search, you'll find out that his organization that he founded called MassResistance is listed as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
All right.
Well, you must be doing something right.
Amen.
Hey, you guys know home here?
I'm here with Southern Poverty Law Center threatened to delist us as a hate group. I pay him $100 to stay. I want to tell you before I get started my favorite Mark Fisher story. When he was at the convention running for governor, you had to get 15% of the votes. And the way they do it is they call out the names of each delegation and they tell you how many votes each delegation gives all the candidates. And what I decided to do was film that. You know, just, I was there as a delegate and, you know, mass resistance, so I thought I'd just film that portion. So at the end of all of the counting and everything, they announced that Mark didn't get the 15%, and so therefore he couldn't be a candidate. And so I went home and we played the tape and counted the votes, and he did get the 15%. So we put that on YouTube, and they were forced to put him on the ballot. The Charlie Baker controlled things with live. Anyway, you may have seen me playing with my phone. I don't know if you're aware, but a few minutes ago, the state Supreme Judicial Court came down with their ruling on whether Governor Baker's edicts are constitutional or not. And not surprising, they're claiming that they are constitutional. Now, I have an interest in that because we did a very exhaustive article on that, and on the you know, the acts of 1950 that Baker is using on this, and it is clearly not constitutional. I mean, it's not constitutional on many, many levels, and you know, not to mention that a federal judge a few months ago declared that similar actions in Pennsylvania were against the United States Constitution and their state constitution. And he said that, you know, even if there's an emergency, the Constitution doesn't get abrogated. And however, our Supreme Judicial Court said that, let's see, this is one of my favorite quotes. They said that it does not violate the state. The emergency orders as a whole were, let's see, serve the state interest of slowing the spread of COVID-19, which is a legitimate state interest. So because it's a state interest, according to the Supreme Judicial Court, it overrides our constitutional protections. So these are the people that we have running our judicial system. I'm sure you'll be reading more on that. This just happened, I guess, a few hours ago. Anyway, to get started, yeah, Hal and I really do go back. I remember it a little differently than Hal. I remember back in 1993 when I first started getting involved with the parental rights movement. My daughter was in first grade in Newton. And I started challenging everything, and I got attacked viciously by the usual suspects on the left. And I didn't know anybody outside of the town. And then one day, this guy shows up at my house, Hal, with, you know, stuff on CICAs and other stuff, and I'm going, wow, what a guy. You know, he said, you know, there's people all over the state that, you know, that are on your side, Brian, and things went from there. We ended up starting a local parents group, which expanded into a statewide group and is now a national and international group. We have chapters all over the United States, from California to Maine, and we have a chapter in the UK, in Nigeria, in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Australia, Canada, and just all over. But we got our first big success, and we do things differently than most pro-family groups. Our first big success was here in Massachusetts. In 1994, we decided that we wanted the right to have parents opt out of, you know, sexual content in the schools. And this was something that the legislature did not want to pass. The House didn't want to pass it, the Senate didn't want to pass it, and the governor certainly didn't want to sign it. But all three of those things happened, and it's still state law, Chapter 71, Section 32A, the Parental Notification Act. And the way we did it was having angry parents. angry, these mothers with their, their kids came into the State House and screamed at them. And both houses passed it, and Governor Weld signed it and didn't even invite me to the signing ceremony. But one of the things we learned from that is that when you're dealing with these people, that's the way you get things done.
Amen.
Yes.
And we have had a lot of successes around the country since then. One of our most interesting recent success was in California this past year, where they had one of these ridiculous laws that would ban therapy for people who wanted therapy on same-sex attraction. And the LGBT movement is making these laws around to stop that. And we hadn't been paying much attention to it. It passed the Assembly in California, the State Assembly, and then it passed the Senate. And it had to go back to the State Assembly for this one vote on the technicality. And there were, I don't know, a month left in the session. And we got started, and we had people from all over the state of California hammer the members of the California Assembly. I mean, just hammer them just relentlessly. And also the sponsor of the bill, who was this gay activist assemblyman from San Francisco. And on the final day of the session, he pulled the bill. And he said he didn't think it had the support anymore to pass. And it didn't pass, and he didn't bring it back the following year, even though he had promised the LGBT groups that he would do so. And again, this was all done just on the basis of tons and tons of angry people saying, if you do this, you will have trouble in your next election, and we just do not do this to us and our children. And it's unfortunate that the conservative movement doesn't understand, or doesn't want to understand, that kind of approach. Mass resistance is not funded by big donors, because most of the big donors in the conservative movement are like the big donors of the Republican Party.
Amen.
Yes.
They don't want to, they don't want to get their hands dirty. And I've had people in other groups say that they can't do what we do because their donors wouldn't let them. So we're funded mostly by small donors, lots of small donors, and we're not well liked by by mainstream conservative groups. I mean, personally, I get along with them, but we're not invited to their things. We were banned from CPAC a year or so ago.
Wow.
Sort of a fun thing. We wanted to have a table at CPAC, so we arranged for this table and we paid for it. And then they heard a speech that I'd made that said that we need to go after school officials who are pushing the transgender agenda, and that we need to go after them hard. And they got cold feet and told us, here's your money back, you can't come. And it caused a huge firestorm among a lot of conservative groups. I mean, there was this whole, World Net Daily, all these other groups wrote articles and radio shows, but CPAC didn't want to relent. Part of the reason they didn't want to relent, of course, is that the log cabin Republicans are involved with them and are a funder of CPAC. And in fact, Facebook and Google had tables at CPAC. So that should tell you about that. So anyway, this brings us to where we are now. The left has been at war with us. When I say us, I mean Americans, conservatives, for probably 120 years. This is nothing new, what we're seeing. They hate us. And the people that support them hate us. And they know what they're doing. This goes back to the time of John Dewey in the public schools. They know what they're doing. And they have no morals. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first got involved in the fighting the school system in Newton, I got this call at home one evening, and I pick up the phone and some guy is screaming at me. And it turns out that it's this, this was in, you know, the early 90s, it was a friend of mine. It was a Russian immigrant who was this, you know, MIT computer scientist, normally a very soft-spoken guy, and he had kids in the Newton schools. And he said he had found out what they're teaching him on the, you know, homosexuality and sex ed stuff, and that they would not let him interfere. And he's, you know, he was screaming, these people are just like the people that I left from the Soviet Union, he said. They lie, they have no morals, they are just, you know, they're just these horrible, horrible people, just like the people that ruled us in the Soviet Union. And he said, he said, they cannot be rehabilitated. And you know, it's been going on, you know, this has been a war against us for all this time, not just in the schools, but in the news media, the laws, the Supreme Court rulings, you know, TV and the movies, and it's only getting worse. A few days ago, YouTube announced that any videos on YouTube with election fraud are going to be erased. So now that I'm mentioning election fraud, this will probably be erased. They actually said that. And of course, you know, we've all seen what has been happening. And of course, the newspapers and TV networks have been just horrible. But it goes beyond that. You know, if you think about, I mean, you know, there's of course the thing that Hal was involved with, of course. The city of Boston will fly the flag of communist China on their flagpole, but they refuse to allow the Christian flag to be on there. I think they've had the Cuban flag and, you know, all of these other horrible things. But, you know, I was just thinking, the small businesses in Massachusetts and around the country are suffering horribly. People are you know, they're not just financially, although many of them are going bankrupt, but the emotional stress and everything else. And the politicians don't seem to care. You know, I mean, it's just so incredible that you know, their suffering just doesn't seem to register. And, you know, you think, this is sort of how the Russians treated the kulaks in the 1920s. Because small business makes you independent of big government.
Yeah.
And that's what our rulers seem to hate, is anybody that can be independent. They fought the family because the family is a unit that's independent of the big government. That's what drives them crazy about the family, is that it's independent. And that's the same thing with small business. It makes people independent. And it's the only thing that I can imagine, because they just don't care about what's happening to these businesses, and it's just terrible. And of course, there's no interest in stopping the terrible riots that have been scaring people and have been, you know, destroying things. Not only no interest in arresting criminals, but a huge interest in letting criminals out of jail.
Right.
And you know, the statistics about what that has been doing to cities is just horrible. And then of course there's the blatant unconstitutional activities on this whole COVID thing, which today the court decided to allow. The courts in generally, you know, just ignoring all of that. All of those things are completely foreign to America's Constitution and even our state constitutions. But they're being allowed by the people that are running our governments, and the, you know, the Democrats and the general ruling class. And of course, Joe Biden, should he take office, is talking about this thing he calls a Great Reset. And what is that? it's something that is very scary. We need to have our own great reset, is what we need. But in any case, what I'm saying is that this is a war, and I'm very, among other things, I'm, distressed that our side's reaction to this is just completely insufficient. That our people don't seem to understand that. And I want to give one example. And again, I hate to bring this up, but the Roe Act that was passed by this sleazy measure by putting it into a budget item in the Massachusetts legislature. I mean, it's a disgusting law anyway, and they didn't want to, have individual votes on it, so they stuck it into the budget, which of course is what they do with things that they don't want to, they don't want to have a real vote on. And our side's reaction to that, and I say this, with sadness, because I like our people. Our people are decent people, and they're not, but it's sort of to, make these public statements that they're concerned about it, and to, bring flowers and all of this stuff. The people doing this, it is a barbaric act. It is an act that is devoid of all humanity, and we're not saying that. We're saying, well, we're very concerned about the effects on families and blah, blah, blah. We need to make these people understand what inhumanity they're doing, and every individual that's doing that. And our side just isn't doing that. Well, that's the kind of thing that mass resistance does try to do. And it's not as impossible as people might think. I think back to Martin Luther King. I recall, as a junior high school student in the 1960s, it's not remembered, but when Martin Luther King started out, he was not well liked in the press. I mean, the Washington Post and all this, they portrayed him as the sort of crazy guy, the sort of nut. And even among his own friends.
Yes.
The famous letter from the Birmingham jail, a lot of people don't remember that it was written to his friends who had put out a full-page ad in the Birmingham newspaper saying that they should stay away from Martin Luther King. And these were his friends, because he's a hothead and he's just going to make things worse, and all of this business of marching down the street without a permit was the wrong thing to do, and stay away from this guy. That was what the letter from the Birmingham jail was all about. It was to his friends saying, no, you're wrong. This is what we have to do. And he persisted, and it worked. And the South at that time was, as you know, very inhospitable, maybe even more inhospitable than they are to us, to his cause. And I want to, I want to bring up, of course, that our founders, the founders of America understood that. The founders of America understood that legislators, judges, and powerful people are naturally do bad things, and it's just human nature that if you get power, you are going to become corrupt. We've known that since the time of the Greeks, and the founders of America tried their best to not only create a government that reacted to that, but to tell us that. Jefferson, some of Thomas Jefferson's quotes attributed to him are very interesting, where he said, "I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery." Or, "When government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny." Or there was a letter that he wrote to John Adams' son-in-law that said, what country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It's its natural manure. This is what the patriots and the founders understood, is that you can't just elect people to office and then go home and hope for the best, because the best isn't gonna happen. You have to have a constant counter-revolution against what, you know, how God made us, which is, when we get power, we get corrupt.
Yep.
And so that, to sort of sum up, is what mass resistance really is intending to do over the next several months. We've been around for 25 years and we've built a certain organization, but now we want to build the strongest and best activism group that the conservative movement has ever seen. And that's what we want to do, and we want to start in Massachusetts. We want to start going up against these corrupt politicians. We want to start going up against everything that's happening here. And I think that, you know, just as back in the 1990s when we got that bill passed, when every single person said it was impossible. I mean, you know, Planned Parenthood ran the State House even back then. I think that you know, they want to have a great reset. Well, we'll have a great reset of our own. So that's where mass resistance is going to. You can go to our website, massresistance.org. If you're not getting our emails, I have a sign-up sheet here, and I want to thank you for having me. And if there's any questions or anything, I can, you know, ask them.
Can you give out your website for all the millions of viewers?
www.massresistance.org.
Great.